The NBA All-Star break is officially in the rearview mirror, and unfortunately, the same version of the Sixers have returned to the floor. They were straight up played off the court by the defending champion Boston Celtics, showing little signs of resistance, and on top of that, we have a new, unique, surprising, and mysterious injury that has popped onto the Sixers injury report, with the status of Eric Gordon seemingly looking uncertain for the foreseeable future. I want to break down exactly what went wrong on the court with this Sixers organization, and why there needs to be a deeper dive and questions into the medical staff or the outlook for those personnel here. Now, to start off with, I do want to highlight tonight's game. It was a 124-104 loss at the hands of the Boston Celtics. The biggest stat that I want to point out here is the three-point line. The Celtics in this matchup shot 24 of 54 from beyond the three-point arc, 44.4% from three. The Sixers just 8 of 39 in those long-range attempts. That is 20.5%. Now, in general, I'm a guy that is willing to chalk up some games to pure shooting variance. That there's going to be nights where opponents are hot and there's not much that you can do about it, but that was not the case in this matchup. These were self-inflicted issues by the Sixers team, and we know it's been a point of weakness for them defending the three-point line all year. That Nick Nurse is so committed to this style of defense, this blitzing, trying to force turnovers, throwing multiple bodies at guys, bringing 2 or 3 defenders flying at the three-point line. And when it clicks, like it did with the Toronto Raptors when he was coaching there, it does look good. It is effective. But the Sixers just straight up don't have the personnel for that, and it is maddening to me to see him continue to run with this same game plan. And on top of that, the adjustment that was made from Nick Nurse tonight was to play zone defense. Zone defense, the thing that makes it easier than any other style of defense to generate three-point looks against a team that is shooting three-pointers at a historically high rate, greater than any team in NBA history. This is who the Celtics are. They're going to beat you from the perimeter. They're going to launch three-pointers because 3 points is worth more than 2. So that's what they're going to do, and the Celtics and the Sixers just gave them a green light to make that happen as often as possible. Now, Nick Nurse was asked about this post-game. Shout out to Sam DiGiovanni of Clutch Points, who tweeted out the clip here, and Nurse basically rumbled something to the effect of, well, they were scoring three-pointers when we were going man-to-man, so I wanted to change the look and hope something happened, and obviously that was not the case there. While I get the concept of shaking up the defense to try and make an impact, it just conceptually, from a basketball standpoint, makes zero sense why that would ever work. And for the Sixers team, while I throw critiques at them bringing 2-3 bodies at guys, they're not good enough at zone defense either. You just don't have the personnel to accomplish the things that you are trying to. Is that a critique of Daryl Morey? Sure, that is fair. There should be a little bit more lockstep viewership between the head coach and general manager. But you're not going to get guys like Tyrese Maxey or Gershon Yabusele to be capable of flying around the perimeter at the rate that this version of defense requires them to do. Now, this is not to fully excuse this game, that we can just chalk it up to that, as to reflect on one other stat that I did want to pull up, the ultimate score here. You can see quarter by quarter, the breakdown. 36-28, the Celtics outscored the Sixers in the first quarter. Same exact score in that second quarter, 36-28. Through the first half, I honestly did not think it was a bad performance by the Sixers team. Now, yes, they were trailing by 16 at halftime, but when the wheels really came off was in that third quarter. 28-18, they were outscored, and it was lifeless effort across the board. That starts with Joel Embiid, who sets the tone for this organization and will continue to. He finished with 3 rebounds tonight. A 7-foot center finished with 3 rebounds in an entire basketball game. That cannot happen ever. He had 0 rebounds in the second half. It's unacceptable. It straight up is for Joel Embiid. And for the version of Joel Embiid, which, by the way, this was his 18th game that he's played this entire season, if that's going to be the case, you got to bring your A game when you're there, man. If this is going to be you, if you're going to be a part-time player that can't suit up on an every night game, then the nights that you are there, make it feel like it. That's my message to Joel Embiid. Who knows what he's dealing with physically? It has been a nightmare to get any sort of answer to this point, and this brings us right to the conversation about the Sixers medical staff. All we've heard from Joel Embiid is knee soreness, knee injury management, knee swelling. There's never been a specific injury reference from start to finish this year, and that's what gives me a little bit of pause about this concept of he needs another surgery and things will be cleaned up. We're not even confident that that's even an option on the table. While if that is the case and Joel Embiid needs another surgery and we can maybe revive his career, that he can be back to the version of himself that we've seen, the MVP version of Joel Embiid, sign me up. He should have had that surgery yesterday. But I also kind of venture to believe that if that was on the table, they would have taken that opportunity. Now, another medical conversation to have regards Eric Gordon. So Eric Gordon as a whole, and this was released post-game in the pre-game press conference here, that we have not seen Gordon for a couple games. He was ruled out tonight with a wrist issue. Well, he was asked about the status, and Kyle Neubeck tweets this out saying, Nick Nurse on Eric Gordon's wrist issue. Quote, he's seen 2 specialists, and they still don't know what to do. says he'll need to get more looks from more doctors and could potentially be managed, but acknowledged there is a scenario where it keeps him out, quote, a long time. This is just insanity to me. What in the world could be wrong with his wrist that is perplexing doctors? That we've had multiple specialists look at this, and this is now becoming an issue. That this isn't anything that they have an answer to or an ability to address or heal or have a game plan in place. And shout out to my guy RB Philly Take, who I think summed this up pretty well. He tweets out, "It's time to have a convo about the Sixers medical staff. Eric Gordon has a wrist issue that can't be fixed. Kyle Lowry has a hip issue that can't be fixed. Joel Embiid can't play back-to-backs. Paul George has been hurt 5 times. Andre Drummond has a toe injury that won't heal. When do we start looking at the people that are supposed to get these guys healthy?" And this is not even going back historically a little deeper when you talk about like the Markelle Fultz situation and what went down with that, or other individual issues that have popped up that they have not dealt with well. Joel Embiid is suspect A here for what is the injury status of him, or what is the issue, what is he dealing with? These are all questions that you can either look directly at the medical staff for not having the answers or not doing a good enough job at getting these guys back on the court, or you can look a little bit at the communication. Is there more known behind the scenes than is being made public? I have to venture to believe that is the case, but the reality is the results are the results. I understand this is basketball. These are professional athletes. This is professional sports. Guys are going to get hurt. But you also can't look me in the eye and act like it's been completely a normal game plan by the Sixers team, this organization, for how they've handled things and the results of getting guys back on the floor. That is an issue. That is an issue that needs to be fixed moving forward, and I don't know who to point the finger at. But for the Sixers organization, there should be a deep dive internally for what is going on here. Is there an issue with how we're handling our players? Because nothing else is seeming to be working at this point. Now, as far as the outlook as a whole, the Sixers are in a tough space, man. They've now dropped 6 consecutive games. They are 15 games below 500, a .367 winning percentage, well below the floor of what I had for the Sixers team. I thought the worst case scenario was better than what we're seeing on the floor. And to kind of reflect on the tankathon odds here, they've now dropped to the 6th worst record in the NBA. They're 20-35 on the year, a .364 winning percentage, a 6-game losing streak. And where does that bring them? They currently have a 37.2% chance at a top 4 pick and a 9% chance at the number 1 overall pick. Their chances to keep the pick, I should have pulled up as well, is sitting slightly above that. But honestly, the way the odds work out, there's a pretty slim chance of them falling or 5 or 6. It really comes down to, a roughly under 40% chance of them keeping that draft pick currently. Now, the other problem with that is looking above them in the table here. I find it hard to believe that they can catch a lot of these teams. Will they be better than the Toronto Raptors? Maybe Brandon Ingram suits up, can win a couple games. The Charlotte Hornets, yes, they knocked off the Lakers in their first game back, but I have a hard time believing that they have this many wins ahead of them. And for the Sixers, I think we have this tanking plan a little backwards, that if the goal is to continue losing games, then keep doing exactly what you're doing. Joel Embiid, keep rolling out there at whatever version of himself you are. It's unacceptable the way he's not setting the tone for this team. And if we are going to, hand out the blame pie for this Sixers season, it's impossible not to give the biggest chunk to Joel Embiid. So if that is the issue, if he needs to get himself right, whatever that means, then go make that happen tomorrow. Let's speed this process along and give us something to hope for the remainder of the season. But for the Sixers, they continue to push this narrative, this conversation, their belief that we just got to get in the playoffs and give us a chance. Well, prove that. Show me something. What reason do we have to believe in this Sixers team? What historic playoff success are they leaning on that I have missed out? Because I am not seeing it. And I do shout out to Kyle Neubeck once again, who I do think put this in a pretty clear way here. And what he says exactly is just no way you can look at this performance from a healthy team and conclude that, quote, just got to make the play in and watch out should be the organizational mindset for the next 2 months. The Boston Celtics are defending champions. They're legitimate title threats again this year. That is a good basketball team. We just watched them wax the Sixers. There is a gap in how good those teams are. This is not one of those you had an off night. They're not good enough. They're not better than that team. And by the way, if you do work your way out of the playing game, there's a pretty likely chance that that's the exact team you're facing in the first round. So you're telling me, Daryl Morey, Sixers organization, guys that want to look me in the eyes right now, that is the plan of attack. That we're just going to hope for the best and, sneak our way into the play-in and then it's all going to work out. That is just looking like an increasingly improbable plan from here, and I don't understand what they have to lean on. In past years, when the Sixers were bad, at least we're watching this guy's development. Tyrese Maxey continues to get better. Who knows? Maybe KJ McDaniels could be a future NBA player. Those are the things that we had our eyes on. For this year, what is it? they're not good enough to straight up win. There's also not the amount of young talent that we're leaning on developing. Adem Bona played 1 minute tonight while Andre Drummond was horrible on the floor, straight up from start to finish. I don't need to see another Andre Drummond minute in a Sixers uniform, to be perfectly honest. It has been as bad as possible. I understand the expectations are far different, but I still think there's a case to be made that Drummond was, relative to expectation, a bigger failure than Paul George as far as a free agent addition. But this is not to excuse Paul George, who clearly is not carrying his weight and has been that way. Now, in defense of Paul, he was the Sixers' leading scorer with 17 points tonight. Is it unacceptable in the year 2025 that 17 points is your leading scorer on an NBA roster? It absolutely is. But for Paul specifically, I did think there was a little bit more focus offensively tonight. He looked a little bit more in attack mode, and that has to continue. We got to leave this year with something. If they're not bottoming out and trying to tank, we got to find at least a belief, some signs in the right direction that this team is figuring out how to play together. But for the time being, I have more questions for the medical staff. I have more questions for Nick Nurse. And I have a lot of questions about each and every one of these guys on the roster for how much do you actually care about winning basketball games. Ultimately, we'll see what happens from here. The season will continue on. They will be back in action Saturday against the Brooklyn Nets. But boy, it just gets rougher and rougher to watch this season. So shout out to you guys for bearing with me on this channel. We will get through it together right here on Sixers Digest. So appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here, drop your thoughts below, let it rage in the comments, and I'll be back talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.